They tied him up, dumped him in the middle of a deserted road like garbage, and drove off laughing, thinking it was the best joke of the night. They had no clue who they were dealing with. This isn't a story about forgiveness. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's start from the beginning. Walter Crane, 55 years old, was the kind of man who believed in doing things by the book. After decades of service, he had finally come back to his hometown, not just as a familiar face, but as the newly sworn-in chief of police. It wasn't just a badge to him, it was a purpose. He had a vision, one that involved purging the deep-rooted corruption festering within the department. But his first day on the job was going to be anything but ordinary. It was early evening, and Walter was driving along a quiet country highway in his aging pickup. The truck had seen better days, but it was dependable, and Walter preferred things with a little history. Wearing his faded red MAGA cap and a worn-in jacket, he felt at ease. The road was silent, the kind of quiet that invites your thoughts to roam. Then, flashing lights blinked in the rearview mirror. Seriously? He muttered, easing off the gas and pulling over. He knew he wasn't speeding. Everything was in order. Maybe a light out. Either way, he stayed calm, at least for now. Two officers approached. The first, Officer Brian Harper, tall, heavy-set, with a smirk glued to his face, took the lead. Behind him, Officer Derek Green followed, twirling his baton with the cockiness of a man who'd never been challenged. "Evening, sir," Harper said, leaning on the driver's side door like it was his own. "You know your headlight's out, right?" Walter looked at him evenly and nodded. "Thanks for letting me know, officer. I'll handle it first thing tomorrow." He passed over his license and registration, polite and measured. No reason to escalate. Harper barely glanced at the paperwork. Meanwhile, Green prowled around the vehicle, tapping the hood with his baton like he was conducting an inspection. "You seem awfully chill for someone pulled over in the middle of nowhere," Green sneered. "What's the rush, Grandpa?" "Big plans." Walter raised an eyebrow but stayed composed. "Just heading home after work." "No rush at all." Green leaned in, narrowing his eyes. "MHMM. And what's with the hat? You think slogans make you somebody? That what this is?" Walter took a breath, held back the irritation. "Actually, I'm the new chief of police," he said, voice level. "I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding." For a second, the two officers glanced at each other. Then Harper laughed loudly. "Chief of police? That's a good one. What's next? Running for mayor?" Green snorted, shaking his head. "Right, and I'm president." Funny guy. Before Walter could speak again, Harper's hand was on the door. "Step out of the truck, sir. Let's double-check everything." "What for?" Walter asked, puzzled. "You've got my ID, my registration. There's no problem here." Harper scoffed, his tone sharp. "Now you're questioning protocol? Look, either you get out, or we take you out. Your move." Walter knew better than to argue. He unbuckled his seat belt and stepped out, trying to stay composed despite the rising tension. Green moved up behind him fast and, without any warning, yanked his arms back. "Hey, what's going on?" Walter asked, trying to keep his voice even as Green slapped cold steel cuffs on his wrists. "Just being cautious," Green replied with a smirk. "You never know who's playing the innocent card." Meanwhile, Harper dug through the truck, tossing things out onto the ground: groceries, an old jacket, and finally, Walter's red cap. Well, Harper said, holding the cap high like he'd found buried treasure. "Got yourself a Patriot hat, huh? Think that makes you special?" Walter clenched his jaw, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. "You're making a mistake," he said evenly. "Both of you." Green just chuckled, pulling the cuffs tighter. "Oh yeah? What are you gonna do, Chief? File a complaint?" Harper snorted, tossing the hat back into the truck. "Relax, old man. We're just doing our job." Walter said nothing, just stood there quietly, knowing full well this wasn't about a broken headlight anymore. The road stretched on like a dark ribbon under the night sky, thick forest pressing in on both sides. Harper and Green, drunk on their imagined authority, drove Walter deeper into the woods. The old truck rattled along the uneven path, its lights slicing through the black. Walter wasn't watching the trees blur by. His mind was working, measuring, calculating. These guys thought they had the upper hand. They didn't realize who they were dealing with yet. Not even close. Then the truck came to a jarring stop, the tires crunching against gravel. The night was cold and still, the wind whistling faintly through the trees. Harper opened the door and leaned in with that same smug grin. "All right, Grandpa," he said, gripping Walter's arm. "Out you go. Time for a little lesson in manners." Walter didn't resist. He stepped out, eyes sweeping the area. No homes, no lights, just an empty stretch of forgotten road surrounded by silence. "This seems a little extreme," Walter said, voice steady but firm. "If you've got a problem, let's deal with it at the station." Harper laughed, shaking his head. "Oh, we'll get there. But first, we're going to help you understand how things work around here." From the back of the truck, Green appeared holding a length of old rope, frayed and worn like it had spent years in a garage. "Bet you didn't see your night ending like this, huh, Chief?" Walter stood straight, refusing to flinch. "You're making a big mistake." Yeah, Harper said, rolling his eyes. "We'll sort that out later." Before Walter could say another word, they pushed him toward a rusted metal post, likely part of an old road sign. They worked fast, wrapping the rope around his torso, arms pinned to his sides. The knots were tight and rough, biting through his jacket, but Walter didn't make a sound. "Perfect," Green said, stepping back. "Not so tough now, are you?" Harper plucked up the red cap again, spinning it on his finger before plopping it onto his own head. "How do I look?" Harper asked, grinning. "Pretty patriotic, right?" Walter narrowed his eyes, his voice low and steady. "This is your last warning. Let me go now, and maybe I'll think about being forgiving when this is all said and done." That earned a chuckle from both officers. Harper pulled out his phone and snapped a quick photo, the flash briefly lighting up Walter's face. "Oh, don't worry, Chief," Harper said. "We'll let you go, eventually." With that, they climbed into their patrol car, the engine growling to life. "See you later, boss," Green called, waving as the vehicle disappeared into the night. Walter stood alone. The ropes dug deep into his arms as he tugged at them, testing for weakness. They held tight. The cold air bit at his skin, and the forest seemed to edge closer with every breath. He inhaled slowly, forcing calm into his limbs. If Walter Crane knew anything, it was how to outlast a bad hand. Survival was second nature, even now. He had lost track of time. The chill gnawed at his fingers, and his legs throbbed from staying so still. Darkness thickened around him like a closing fist. He focused on each breath, keeping steady. But even he had a breaking point. Frustration and grit wrestled in his thoughts. This mess, was never how his life was meant to go. Then a sound. Soft at first, then louder. Footsteps. Crunching gravel, steady and unhurried. Walter tensed, heart thudding. Was it Harper and Green, back for more? A beam of light split the night, followed by a voice. Rough, curious. "Now what in tarnation is this?" The flashlight swept forward and landed on Walter, tied and cold. The man holding it came into view. Thin, weathered, dressed in a beat-up flannel jacket and scuffed work boots. His lined face looked older, but his actions were sharp, focused. "Sir, are you? What the hell happened here?" His voice was shocked, but not panicked. Walter squinted into the light and replied, "It's a long story. Can you cut me loose?" The man didn't hesitate. He dropped the flashlight, pulled a pocket knife from his jacket, and knelt beside Walter. "Whoever did this to you should be ashamed," he muttered, slicing the ropes with quiet precision. In seconds, Walter was free. He stumbled forward, steadying himself against the post, blood flooding painfully back into his limbs. "Thank you," Walter managed, flexing his hands. "You don't know how much I needed that." The man looked him over, puzzled and concerned. "You sure you're okay? You look like hell." Walter straightened up. "I'll survive, but I need to get back to the station. There are 2 officers who have some explaining to do." The man's brow furrowed. "Officers? Are you telling me cops did this to you?" His voice carried disbelief and rising anger. Walter nodded, eyes hard. "It's complicated, but I swear, they're not walking away from this." The man shook his head and grumbled. "Well, my truck's up the road. I'll drive you. You shouldn't be out here alone." Walter hesitated, then gave a tight nod. "Thanks. I appreciate it." The ride was silent. The old truck's engine hummed low as they moved through the night. Walter stared out the window, thoughts spinning like gears. He'd handled bullies before, but this wasn't schoolyard games. No, this was war. By the time they reached the station, in the parking lot, Walter knew exactly what he had to do. "Thanks again," he said, stepping out of the truck. You've done more than enough. Take care of yourself, the man replied, watching as Walter disappeared into the shadows of the station. Walter entered through the back door, careful to avoid the main floor. He didn't want to draw any attention, at least not yet. Once in his office, he sank into his chair. His fingers quickly moved to wake up the laptop. He plugged in the dashcam's memory card and began scanning through the footage until he found what he needed. There it was, Harper and Green, smirking like kids who thought they were untouchable. Their actions were perfectly recorded, the audio crystal clear. Their snide comments, their threats, everything. They hadn't even bothered to disable the camera. Walter muttered in disbelief, shaking his head. Amateurs, he said, leaning back, his mind already raced with possibilities. This evidence wasn't just a smoking gun, it was a cannonball. Harper and Green had made it personal, and now it was time for Walter to return the favor. They're going to regret this, he whispered, a grim smile spreading across his face. Morning sunlight filtered through the blinds of the precinct's break room, casting a warm glow on the two most carefree officers in the building. Harper and Green sat at a small table, sipping their coffee and exchanging smug grins. For them, last night's antics were just another funny story to file under greatest hits. You should have seen the look on his face, Harper chuckled, leaning back in his chair. All tied up like that. Priceless. Green grinned, stirring his coffee lazily. Yeah, and he kept going on about being the new chief. Like, come on, who's buying that? They both laughed, completely unaware of the storm heading their way. The door swung open, and in an instant, the room's light atmosphere evaporated. Walter Crane stepped in, his presence like a cold gust of wind cutting through the precinct. He was dressed sharply, his expression unreadable yet radiating authority. Good morning, gentlemen, Walter said, his voice calm but edged with a sharpness that could cut steel. Harper froze mid-sip, his cup slipping from his hand and shattering on the floor. Green paled visibly, his spoon clinking against the side of his mug as he set it down with trembling fingers. Neither of them said a word. They didn't need to. The look in Walter's eyes said it all. Walter stepped forward, a folder tucked under his arm. I trust you both slept well, he continued, his tone laced with icy politeness. You're going to need all the energy you can muster today. He cleared his throat, trying to regain some semblance of composure. Chief, Walter cut him off with a raised hand, his gaze pinning them both in place. Save it. I'm not interested in excuses. He placed the folder on the table and opened it with deliberate precision, revealing printed stills from the dashcam footage. Each photo captured Harper and Green in all their glory, mocking Walter, tying him to the post, and posing like they'd just won a game. You see these? Walter asked, tapping one of the photos with his finger. These are not just pictures. They're evidence. Evidence of gross misconduct, abuse of power, and a complete failure to uphold the standards of this department. Green's mouth opened, but no words came out. As if to protest, Harper opened his mouth, but no words escaped. He looked as though he wanted to vanish into thin air. Walter leaned in closer, his voice dropping to an ominous tone. Your actions are an affront to this badge, this department, and this community. If you think I'll just write you up and let it slide, you clearly don't know me, he said, his hand pulling a USB drive from his pocket. He held it up. This contains everything. Video, audio, the whole night. It's already been sent to Internal Affairs and the District Attorney's Office. The mayor is also aware of what's been happening right under his nose. Harper finally found his voice, though it trembled with uncertainty. Chief, we didn't mean, he started, but Walter cut him off. His voice cracked like a whip. Didn't mean to violate someone's rights? Didn't mean to tarnish this department's reputation? Spare me, he retorted, gesturing toward the door. You've got 5 minutes to pack your desks and hand over your badges. Consider yourselves lucky I'm not escorting you out in cuffs, but make no mistake, you will face the consequences of your actions. Neither officer moved, frozen in shock. Walter took a step back, his voice cold and unwavering. Get out now. Slowly, Harper and Green rose from their chairs, heads down, and shuffled out of the break room, the weight of their choices finally sinking in. Walter stood still, watching them go, his expression unreadable as the door clicked shut behind them. A faint ripple of applause emerged from the hallway. The remaining officers, who had been listening closely, weren't applauding Harper and Green. They were applauding Walter. For the first time in years, They saw a leader unafraid to hold people accountable, no matter who they were. Walter turned to face the group, his tone resolute. Let this be a lesson to everyone here. This department will not stand for corruption, abuse, or anything less than the highest standards of integrity. If you're not on board with that, there's the door. The room fell silent, every officer standing a little taller. Walter nodded, satisfied with their reaction, and made his way back to his office. For the first time, he felt a sense of hope. This wasn't just about removing two bad cops. It was about setting the stage for a new beginning. As far as Walter Crane was concerned, the future of his precinct had just grown much brighter. What would you have done if you were in Walter's shoes? Do you think he handled the situation the right way? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you, or someone you know, experienced something similar? Let us know. We want to hear your story. If this story was eye-opening or inspiring, don't forget to give it a like and share it with others who care about making a difference. Together, we can shine a light on these issues and work toward creating a better world. This story was made to raise awareness about real problems and inspire positive change. Every voice matters, and your opinion can make an impact. Your voice matters.